Hello, everyone.
Welcome, creeps.
We're starting.
Yes.
It begins now.
No. So I guess this is our first post-Halloween episode.
Yes.
But we're gonna keep it spooky.
Yes, Halloween lives on in our hearts.
How was your Halloween?
It was good. Just hung out with the family, as you know, because you were there.
Yeah, I was.
We just had that bonfire, and we made s'mores, which was cool. I only had s'mores once in my life, and I was like, I don't understand what the big deal is. And then when we were making them, I forgot who it was. They were like, no, you did them wrong. You have to burn them on one side. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that's why they weren't good for me when I first had them.
Yeah.
And then when I had them again, I was like, yeah, still not convinced why they're such a big deal.
I enjoyed mine.
I mean, but the kids, they enjoy, like Mimi in particular, my niece, she just really wanted to make more s'mores, and I was like, sure, make them for me and I'll eat them.
Yeah, I think they were having fun just fucking around with the fire.
Yeah, sticking things in fire. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a really nice evening.
Yeah, it was really cool.
We had good food, and then we sat around the fire telling ghost stories.
Yeah. Yeah, we did, which we'd never done ever.
Yeah.
I think what helped was, or kind of just inspired the idea, was our podcast.
Yeah.
I think before then, or maybe it's just in my imagination, there was like some sort of apprehension of, hearing or dealing with the occult, And I guess it's just made the family a little more comfortable with seeing
Embracing their spooky side.
Yeah, because they listen in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, pretty sure this week is my week to go first. So,
I feel like every week has been your week to go first.
you want to talk about that?
Do you want to get on the chair and talk about that?
So yeah, we're continuing with our regularly scheduled programming.
Yeah.
And yeah, so this week we're going north of the wall again. Yeah.
Are we though?
Yeah. The story is from Canada.
Oh, you are. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm like, how the hell do you know what my story is?
Oh, no, I don't know what your story is. I'm just saying that I'm taking us north of the wall for this first part.
Let's go.
Okay, so Tranquille
All right.
Sanatorium. I did watch something earlier on to say the pronunciation. I'm just going to call it Tranquil.
Okay.
It's just French for tranquil.
Sick.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. My sources this week are abandonedhistoryblog.wordpress.com, Kamloops.ca. Kamloops is the name of the town where this place is actually located.
All right.
But it's Canadian, so it's a crazy name. Kamloops. Travelzoo.com, Infotel.ca, and History Goes Bump. I read up, they did an episode on it, and I didn't listen to it, but I read their notes. All right, so let's get into the history of this place.
Okay.
So Tranquille itself, basically there's this lake in British Columbia near, what the fuck's it called? Kamloops. And it's been used for hundreds and hundreds of years as like fishing and hunting area. And then Kamloops itself was originally set up in like, I can't remember what fucking year, but it was basically a trading post where like First Nations people would meet up and swap goods.
Cool.
Yeah, First Nations, Native American,
Yep.
but Canadian. Anyway, so yeah, I'm not sure at which point they renamed it. I'm sure it was something to do with colonization. Basically, there was a First Nations chief that owned that area, or like it was his territory before the English and the French or whoever took it first. But his name was supposed to be Tranquille, which meant something in their language. And then I think what happened was that was his name. The French word tranquille, it just kind of fell into place. In the 1890s, there was 2 ranches belonging to the Fortune and Cooney family. They were both in business together by the sounds of things. And they began taking in consumptives as boarders on their land. Consumptives being people suffering from tuberculosis or consumption back then.
Yeah.
But basically, I think the idea of it was they were pretty remote at the like it still is a remote area. So these people would come in, live on their land in like small cabins or tents, but like in a separate pocket. I think it was just so as they would take care of themselves for as long as they possibly could. I don't know what happened once they got too sick to look after themselves, but either way, I think the whole idea was just to stop the spread. Anyway, in 1904, the like townspeople from, I keep having to go back up and look at that name, Kamloops, got together and arranged the meeting, and we're like, we need to do something about all these consumptives, and they ended up buying the land off the 2 families, Fortune and Cooney, and they rented. Between the 2, Fortune and Cooney, they also had a lease on like 2,000 acres of government land. So basically, they ended up with like almost 3,500 acres worth of really nice ranch land. So the sanatorium itself was built in 1907, and it was originally called King Edward VII Sanatorium. Nobody seems to know it by that name, though. The place was in a constant state of expansion, as the TB pandemic was not slowing down at all. So by 1910, it could house 49 patients, and they employed 4 nurses and 12 attendants. So initially what they did was they just moved straight into the existing like farmhouses and stuff, but constantly had to keep building. And particularly after World War One, which would have been like 1918, like at the end of that, all these hundreds of thousands of veterans came back with tuberculosis. It's like, well, you survived the war, but now you have TB. So by 1932, the sanatorium was able to accommodate up to 360 patients. Didn't say anything about the staffing at that time, but basically it wasn't just a sanatorium, but at this stage, because it was so remote, they ended up building a miniature city in the grounds. So everybody who worked there lived there, and everybody who lived there worked there, whether it was directly for the sanatorium or like in the local stores or whatever. This went on for years. So generations of families all lived there. They had their own houses, they had a gym, fire departments, stores. They had become almost self-sufficient thanks to the farm that they had acquired during the purchase of the land. And the farm was actually earning a profit as well. So it was this, super steady, self-preserved thing, basically.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, it almost sounds like too good to be true.
Kind of.
You know what I mean? And on the farm, so the farm provided the city, the facilities with fresh meat and vegetables, and also sold to outside thing as well. Like that's how they turned a profit. And apparently they had everything but chickens.
All right.
I just thought, like, if you're going to have...
Well, maybe in the weather, chickens can't really survive.
Oh, yeah,
as,
maybe.
Like bigger animals can.
Oh, yeah, and a little note, when they were building the place, as they did used to do with, like, general older construction projects, they linked every single building with an underground tunnel.
Sick.
So, basically, if you were in your house, you could walk down into the basement, open a door, and there was just this vast cavernous system underneath that went everywhere and anywhere.
Maybe it wasn't scary because there wasn't scary movies yet.
Yeah, like at this time it was just, oh, well, it makes sense.
Yeah. Like this is practical.
Yeah, well, Donna, it just makes sense. But yeah, and because as well, like this is British Columbia, so the winters get freezing cold. They would use these tunnels to obviously transport goods. I'm assuming the locals would use them just to get to and from work and stuff in the really bad months. But also they would use them to transport the dead bodies from the sanitarium to, there was a graveyard on site, and I'm sure there was a morgue in the hospital itself. But the idea was so as the other patients wouldn't get freaked out, because like these patients were paying to actually be there. Like this was a privilege to attend this sanatorium. It cost like I have it it cost $55 per month to stay there.
It's a lot of money.
A lot of money. And the average stay was around 200 days.
That's crazy. So I just looked up how much $55 in 1910 is worth.
Yeah.
And that's about 1,500. So
Okay.
they would have been paying like 1,000, like 1,500 every month.
Yeah, and obviously like not earning any money while they were there. So
Yeah.
basically I'm assuming that it was more or less, maybe not well-to-do families, but people were struggling to put their family members in there.
Well, yeah, because I mean, people didn't come across that kind of money very easily.
Yeah. And there was some survivors, and I was actually texting a lady earlier on today whose father was in this sanatorium in 1954
Mm-hmm.
and is still alive today. Memory is still sharp as a tack.
No shit.
Yeah, and all she said, because I got her number off this paranormal blog. So I texted her because she was like, please contact me. So I texted her being like, oh my God, like this, how crazy. And she was like, oh no, it was nothing paranormal. She just said it was an awful time.
Wow.
Yeah. So she didn't go much deeper than that.
Oh, man.
But I thought like that was still a really interesting link.
She didn't give you nothing?
All she said was, let's just say his time there wasn't a good experience. He was there for a year and survived, unlike many others.
Wow. So it's almost like that's a weird way to put it, right? Like it's like me saying, "Oh, I went to Memorial Hermann and I survived a year there."
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
But like that, tuberculosis back then was like the number one killer
Yeah.
all across the world. Like,
Uh-huh.
so the odds of anyone surviving was like slim to none. Anyway, the hospital's focus at the time was just preventing the spread of TB
Mm-hmm.
because there was no cure back then. Like at this stage.
Oh, the parallels.
Yeah.
The parallelograms.
So the doctors and nurses, what they did was the patients lived on a strict regimen of rest. Like, I think they weren't allowed really leave their beds all too much. Healthy foods, which was provided by the farm, and fresh air. So they were kept in open air verandas in Canada all year round.
That's cold.
That's, I don't know, like how they didn't literally freeze to death, but there are reports from the nurses who tended them finding them on winter mornings with frost on their face.
Poor things. Yeah, I remember when we were watching Ghost Adventures, they had visited this, was it the
Waverly Hills?
Yeah.
Or Trans-Allegheny, one of them.
and they had like those open verandas for the TB
Yeah.
patients.
So I think this was common practice back then, but it's just
Yeah.
like, fuck.
But in fucking Canada, man,
Yeah.
I don't know how the fuck they did it. I don't know how the fuck you lived in Toronto as long as you did, never having a car, going to from work in that fucking weather out there, man.
Yeah.
That's a different kind of people there, person, whatever.
You get used to it pretty quickly. But
Yeah, no, you would. I would not.
Anyway, anti-tuberculosis drugs were introduced in the late 40s, and by 1958, the hospital had closed down.
1958.
Yeah. So after closing, the sanatorium facilities were transferred to the mental health services branch of British Columbia.
Wait, so they went from a hospital where they were getting treated for TB to a mental ward or a mental institution?
Yeah. Because like it was already a medical building, you know what I mean? It was a hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just what they used to do, but I mean, they still do this kind of shit now.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so the site was used as an institution for the mentally disabled and ill. Not my words, but this is the phrasing used in the local history report.
Okay.
So again, from the Kamloops
Sick.
website. Apparently, it wasn't the worst facility at the time, but it still didn't sound like a fantastic place. Like, this was kind of how they seemed to market it. It was like, it's not as bad as
The others.
Yeah, and I think it was also treated as kind of like an overflow facility.
Mm-hmm.
So there was 2 or 3 like kind of main sanatoriums in the BC province, and these guys would get the overflow. Families of the patients were not allowed to give anything to the patients. So, like, you know, families would show up with whatever, like their favorite candy or food and new clothes and shit like that. But everything had to be given to the staff first. So it would be like taken in for inspection. Nobody really knew whether the patients would even get this stuff, but everything, like food, clothing, money, matches, whatever, all mail was checked before being handed over to the patients. Like, it started getting really weird. They also did an awful lot of therapeutic labor, which, you know, good for the mind, good for the body and soul.
For labor.
Get out and work. Exactly. It was all unpaid, and I'm sure it was all to do with, you know, this big ass farm and maintaining all of these fucking buildings around.
Or attending to the other patients.
Well, yeah. And actually, our friend that we were texting earlier, her dad, like in the TB hospital, would go around giving out like the patient's mail and stuff like that. But that seemed like a nice, like it wasn't like a chore. That was like a, oh, go up and walk around. Anyway, from this point on, there's not a huge amount of information. It seems like all of the records were shipped to this big, like
filing building.
Yeah, in a separate. It's still in BC, but it's like in a separate city, and seems like it's not very easy to get hold of. And on the Kamloops website, which is like the official PDF of like all the information that they have about the place, it just says information including the official name of the institution isn't in the Kamloops archives collections. As well as this, the official records, they're still restricted for like the next 6 to 7 years at least. So after that, it becomes public knowledge, but only at the discretion of the company that's holding them.
Yeah.
So anyway, it all gets a little bit hazy there.
That's weird.
Yeah.
You better not catch me as an archivist. I'd be like, you want to research what? Yeah, you can have it. I'd be like, hello, media. I'd be like looking through all this stuff. Be like, look what I found. Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah, this is going to be the biggest podcast ever. So anyway, it operated as basically a mental asylum, or for want of a better word, until 1983, when they were told the place was going to be shut down for good. And at this stage, there was a total of 650 staff. Right? So you can only imagine how many fucking patients there were. And I think that was just direct hospital staff. I don't know that actually included people in the local businesses on the grounds. On the grounds on the site. Because basically people now just call it like a miniature city.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyway, there was 40 of these staff were in a union, and they had to sit in the building, refused to leave. So the patients from, let's just call it the mental asylum, what's the proper word?
I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, these patients were dispersed back to like other more modern hospitals or whatever. The families were not happy at all, because they were there from a lot of the families purely because it meant, oh, well, you know, we can still visit them on weekends and stuff like that. And now all of a sudden they're being moved to like Vancouver and shit like this. So there was all sorts of controversy at the time. But these staff were just worried about their jobs because, like I said, this was their lives. Like, their parents had grown up there. They had grown up there.
Yeah.
Anyway, they managed to get it turned into a detention center for young offenders. But that only lasted like 5 or 6 years. And it was officially closed in 1991. So not that long ago, really. Yeah. Some Italian guy bought it. His name was there, but I just...
I'm looking at your notes, and I think it's funny how you wrote some Italian guy.
Yeah, I know. I was so... Like, his name was there. It probably took me more letters to type out some Italian guy. His name was like Camprisi or something. Anyway, he bought it planning to...
I think that's a type of salad.
Caprese.
Oh.
Anyway, so this Italian dude bought it, and he bought it with the idea of turning it into like a nice resort town. And to be honest, like, it's a fucking great idea because it's right on the lake, all this land, whatever. So the dude was from a town in Italy called Padova, and he had painted, like, basically all he managed to actually get done was, I think, like some general upkeep on the buildings and to paint a few murals of his hometown. Padova. Then by like 1998, he had just stopped paying the mortgage and like taxes and shit, so the government just repossessed it.
Weird.
Yeah. So I think he just like realized how much money it was actually going to cost him. I was like, you know what, fuck it. But yeah, so because of these weird murals and stuff, the place now has like a nickname of Padova City.
Oh,
Yeah, which
that's interesting.
yeah, apparently it's stuck. I think it's kind of like a local joke.
I see.
And it's currently owned by people who plan to return it to the self-sufficient community it once was.
Sick.
Yeah, it is a really cool idea. I don't know how they're planning to do it. Like, they've owned it for years, and it's, I don't know, they have like a nice farm or something. I just have here, they're hippies.
I saw that.
Yeah. Anyway.
I was either they're hippies or they're hippos, and I just figured hippos didn't make much sense.
Yeah, they're actually raising hippos now on the farm. Anyway, onto the paranormal stuff.
All right.
So, straight off the bat, the current owners say that all the stories about the place are lies, that the land is God's land.
All right.
Whatever the fuck that means. I don't know. Also, the sanatorium was featured on some MTV show, I think called Fear, something like that.
Mm.
And I think they might be responsible for some of the rumors about the place now. 2 blogs written by either a brother and a sister or a dude and his friend's sister claimed that MTV actually paid local kids in pizza to make noise around the property while they were filming there.
That's cheesy.
Yeah, like...
Not the pizza, but the stunt.
Well, I hope the pizza was.
Pizza.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah, this kind of, like, because it's listed everywhere as, like, Canada's most haunted destination, all this stuff. But there's not, honestly, a lot of stories about the place. It's just, like, so haunted. So fucking haunted. Crazy haunted. But then that's it.
Yeah.
So anyway, when I found out that that MTV had actually paid local kids to run around and make noise while they filmed, I was like, fuck this. But I had already sunk a lot of time into doing the history of the place, and it looks like a fucking cool place.
Yeah.
So I just kept digging deeper, and basically the bulk of the paranormal stuff that I found was people's own experiences on comments from other articles that I read.
Yeah, I noticed that happens a lot. Like, so that, like, if you want to get unique evidence,
yeah,
that's generally where you tend to dive, because otherwise it gets just really repetitive or just
vague.
No, well, yeah, that too, but it's almost like someone's reinventing someone else's story or like distorting it, you know, kind of like the game Telephone.
Yeah, like Chinese whispers or whatever. Just kind of
that's racist.
Is it?
I'm just kidding. Honestly, I don't know.
I apologize. Anyway.
Well, I mean, they whisper too, right? Everybody whispers.
We're not going down this road. So, some of the common things that are said to have been experienced there are a bizarre twisting mist that has been captured in pictures. This mist is never witnessed by the naked eye, but has supposedly been captured by many a person. It's just
how,
like, on their cameras.
Oh,
that's what it's only in photographs like that.
Okay, I get it.
So something like that I wouldn't normally believe in or whatever.
Yeah.
But then I thought back to like our photos from Edinburgh that we only kind of rediscovered, and it has this like weird ass fucking mist that we didn't see at the time. So I'm like, yeah.
No, even then, like, I don't take a lot of, I don't stake a lot into it, you know? I take those kind of photos with a grain of salt. It was more so the experience that kind of just stuck with me, you know, of trying to take those pictures.
Yeah. Anyway, there are stories of a nurse being murdered in the underground tunnels while she was transporting a patient from one building to the next. The patient, like, you know, he's a mental patient, he lost his mind, and he killed her. Nowhere could I find actual, like, articles or nothing about that. Like,
yeah.
So that is one of the legends. Visitors claim to see a mother crying for her child on the 6th and 8th floors, while others have reported hearing the voices of kids playing in the children's ward or seeing bright orbs near the main entrance. Below the buildings is a series of underground tunnels. Oh yeah, so apparently people always hear voices in these tunnels. These bright orbs are like super common. Like I've seen a lot of like first-hand comments and stuff that were like, yeah, we were there, we saw these weird fucking dancing orbs around the main entrance. Now, personally, I remember seeing like weird orbs in one of the fucking places that we went to at home. And obviously I'm going to say, oh, maybe it was kids with torches or whatever, but a lot of people were seeing these orbs like with their own eyes, not just in pictures and stuff. So I thought that was pretty cool. People are often seen in the windows, usually just black shadows, but people are always seeing people in the windows. This one really hit home for me.
Go ahead.
Apparently an electrician died while working in the basement. Don't know how, don't know why.
I used to work in a lot of abandoned buildings.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah, like older buildings and stuff.
Yeah, older buildings, yeah.
But yeah, anyway, apparently he is one of the apparitions down there.
This could have easily been you had they decided to, you know what, let's renovate this building, and they're putting a lot of money into it, and we're going to give this contract to this company, and you just happen to work for that company.
Yeah, basically. It's come close a few times. Yeah, so if you see like an electrician down there in the middle of the night, he's a ghost. So anyway, here are some of the comments from Abandoned History blog. This was from the actual blog, and this was their second time down there. The first time they went down, they did the actual historical tour that the couple that own the place are now running, but nothing like major happened. So they went back and broke in, which seems to be the only way to really get a good look at the place.
Yeah.
And it goes, after 2 hours of walking around the property, pulling at every single boarded up window, we were losing hope until we saw the small window on the second floor of one of the main hospital buildings. We scrambled up the side of the building and crammed our bodies through the window, my shoulders barely fitting through. We stood up inside a greenish shower room, ceramic tiles peeling away from the walls, and high-fived each other, ecstatic that we finally got inside this incredible institution. Suddenly, we hear a loud, deep grunt come from some room off the main hallway, followed by heavy boot steps on the old wooden floors. We immediately shut up, for fear that a caretaker was in the building for some odd reason, and that we had been caught. Too frightened about getting caught, we crouched in the rank shower room. I finally mustered up the confidence and said, "Hello?" Instantly, another grunt, louder this time, echoed down the hall, followed by more heavy footsteps, walking away from where we were hunkered down. I could feel all my hairs on my body standing on end, like there was an electric current streaming through the air. Bam! A door slammed shut, and the footsteps stopped. After what seemed like hours, I crept towards the bathroom doorway and into the hall. I craned my neck past the door frame and peered into the vacant hallway. There was no one there. In fact, not a single footprint had disturbed the layer of dust on the wood-panelled floor. That's that one. And some comments, or one comment on this. There was a few comments on this of people saying like, we saw the orbs and blah blah blah. But this one was from, I think her name was Lexi. I grew up in Kamloops. Fucking hell. It's the most weirdest name. Kamloops. Kamloops. I grew up in Kamloops and have gone to Padova City regularly when I was a teenager. I've had quite a few paranormal interactions. One being hearing someone following us, another hearing screams in the old water tower. Another, I took a picture of an old building that had nothing but dust in the window. When I developed the picture, there was a smiley face with the word smile written underneath.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit much. So this one is a comment from someone who lived there. And it was in the hauntedplaces.org article. So the dude's name was just, I think it's a dude, it was just D. My grandfather was a medical superintendent at Tranquille from 1968 till 1978. We lived with my grandparents in what was known as the doctor's house during the time. I can attest to the fact that the place is most definitely haunted. One night around 11 p.m. in 1972, this is going back a bit, The entire family was out visiting with the head nurse who lived just across from our house. All the doors and windows were locked, and I was there by myself watching TV. My grandfather kept all his empty ginger ale cans in paper bags in the back entrance to return for refund. I heard the bags of cans being violently shaken around. I thought the family had returned home early and someone had tripped over the bags of cans. I went to investigate, but there was nobody there. So I went back to watch TV. About 3 minutes later, I heard a shuffling of footsteps that sounded like someone with a club foot, very specific, shuffling towards the room where I was watching TV. As the footsteps got closer to the room I was in, I could hear heavy breathing. The footsteps got closer to the door of the TV room and stopped outside the door, but the heavy breathing continued. I was absolutely paralyzed with fear and froze in my chair, not making a sound. The breathing continued for about 15 minutes, then started to fade away. I didn't dare go investigate anymore as I was scared out of my wits. About 45 minutes later, the rest of the family came home. I asked if they had played a joke on me, but they said they were at the nurse's house all evening and never left. I confirmed this the next day with my friend, who was one of the nurse's sons. It's actually giving me goosebumps now as I'm typing this. Very scary indeed. On another occasion, in 2015, a friend of mine with a group of other people snuck into Tranquille about 3 a.m. They managed to access the tunnels, where they said they saw mysterious orbs of light flying around. My friend is a pretty big guy, 6'2", and he and the others were so terrified that they got out ASAP. All my time spent living at Tranquille was so wonderful and special, but that one night in 1972 will haunt my memory forever. Now, the thing that I thought was interesting about this, in 1972 is when, they housed the people that were suffering with mental disabilities, whatever the fuck that is.
Yeah.
And the whole place was linked with these tunnels. Like, do you think maybe one of the patients got out?
It's likely.
Yeah, right. So either way, it's a fucking creepy story.
Yeah.
My
only question is, what's a clubfoot?
Google it. Just Google clubfoot. I don't know what makes it happen. I think it's just like birth defects or something.
Why is it called club? It sounds like a club.
Yeah, no, I don't know what it's called.
It sounds like the name of a foot doctor's office.
Clubfoot.
Yeah.
Hi, welcome to Clubfoot.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one I got from a website called novarockefeller.com. I thought I was onto a winner. I thought this was like, oh, cool, like a nice small time blog. Turns out she's some like IG influencer and her boyfriend is some white rapper. I don't like him, but this is his story.
That's allowed.
Yeah, I don't know whether his thing is like, done ironically, but he just seems like a dick.
Like for shock factor, kind of like Borat.
Yeah, kind of. So anyway, he did do a video that's this on his YouTube where he just tells the story. It's pretty long-winded, but I've cut out most of the bullshit. I think, anyway, like most of the, like basically he's very animated. So anyway, he was there for a video shoot. They didn't have any idea about the place other than it was abandoned buildings. And when they got there first, it was daytime. They go in to check the place out and they see these weird lights and hear these voices. And a couple of kids come walking out of one of the houses. They were there doing the same thing. Well, not a video shoot. They were just there exploring. They find these tunnels and they're like obviously they didn't do any research about the place. So these tunnels for them were like, what the fuck is this? And they go down. It's full of like weird old medical equipment and stuff. So they're getting like, they're pretty freaked out and they're like, oh shit. So let's start shooting this music video down here because it's pretty cool. They're there, they're fine. They're starting to get wrapped up down here and they start hearing voices in the tunnels. So they open one of the doors off this tunnel and they notice then that it goes up into somebody's house or whatever it used to be. And this freaks them out too much. So they leave and they go back to the main sanatorium and they set up and they start shooting or whatever. At this stage, it gets dark while they're in there. So nothing else happens. They get all the footage that they want. They get back to the car and they realize that they forgot a light. And they get into a fight over it because there's three of them. There's the rapper guy his best friend, and the video producer. So turns out that the rapper guy's best friend doesn't like the video producer, and he's like, yeah, I know he forgot a light. I saw him put it there. I just didn't say anything. That's the kind of people we're talking about, right?
Jesus.
Then he realizes that this light was actually worth $1,200 and the video producer's not leaving without it.
Yeah.
So the producer stays at his car and the two best friends head back. The rapper guy and his buddy. And he has this tiny little flashlight and they go back, whatever. Anyway, it's all in complete fucking darkness now. Spooky as shit. You have to walk through the forest and all and up this mad hill just to get back to it. And yeah, so this is where the friend says, I know exactly where the light is. I saw him put it down and I knew he wouldn't pick it back up. I just don't fucking like him, so I was going to let him leave it behind. So they know exactly which room to go back to in the sanatorium. So they go, they get it, and as they're heading out, the two of them just start getting freaked out. They start thinking that they're seeing things behind them, but then they realize that they're both seeing the same fucking thing, and every time they turn around, it's not there. All of a sudden, they look in one of the rooms off the corridor, and there's this shadow, like a 6 foot something shadow, standing in the doorway. The two of them fell over each other trying to get the fuck out of this place. They just saw this, and he said some primal instinct just took over, and they gunned it. They fell out of this place, getting out of there. But he described the shadow pretty well as a shadow person, really thick outline. You could not see through it, but you could kind of see something through it and all this. But yeah, so they reckon that they were followed out of this place. The reason why I included this in the story was because he had no knowledge of the place whatsoever. And the two of them saw the exact same thing at the exact same time. And it was like it was tricking them all the way up until this point where it just manifested in full fucking view. And the two guys legged it out. Yeah, so that's Tranquille.
Sick.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get to visit there one day. And maybe get some organic cheese or something.
That would be cool. Some squeaky cheese. That's a thing.
Yeah, in Wisconsin. British Columbia.
Yeah. Oh, they could have squeaky cheese.
It's north.
That's like saying, no, you can't get yellow cheese in Canada.
You can't. They only sell
They only sell white cheese.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, it's a pretty interesting looking place. And I will put up a load of pictures because there is tons and tons of pictures from like old postcards back in the day. And like obviously so much modern photography of this like creepy ass abandoned place. Papa.
Sick.
Yep.
Sick.
Oh, are you being the computer?
No, I'm being Clubfoot.
Oh.
All right, y'all. Let's get into it.
Entertain me.
So I'm gonna preface this by including my sole source. My source is Possessed: The True Story of an Exorcism by Thomas B. Allen. Now, this isn't just any exorcism. This is the story that inspired the screenplay for The Exorcist.
Bum, bum, bum.
And then you see just imagine the meme of that groundhog where he looks surprised.
I'll edit that into the video.
I feel like
we already used him in a video.
Let's do it again. Have you seen The Exorcist?
Yeah, of course.
Have you? I think I may have seen it once.
What?
In my drug-induced days. I'm not sure.
We have to watch it then.
But I remember my mom saying that she had seen it before when she had first came over to the U.S. 'cause she's from Mexico.
Yeah.
And she came over here when she was 14. It was just her and her cousin. And they came over here to work, as you do. And she said that she had saw it in the movie theaters. And she said that she was so scared. And she doesn't watch scary movies. Like, you can't get her to watch scary movies.
She likes those really bad action movies.
Yeah, she likes really bad action movies. And She used to be really into telenovelas. So yeah, so my mom saw that, and when she got home from the theater, she said she couldn't sleep, and she slept with a picture of her mom with like she had a picture of her mom in a frame, and she would like clutch it while she was in bed
That's so sad.
because she was so scared. I mean, like I was telling Mimi, my niece again, to keep showing up in this episode. I think I just need to text her. We were talking about books and how I thought maybe I just didn't like to read like leisurely anymore.
Yeah.
But it just takes a really good book
To pull you back in.
to pull you back in, and this was it.
Yeah.
I had read the Book of Execution, and after a while it got really vexing. But this one was such a smooth read, but toward the end I had to skim through it because we needed to hurry up and record this episode. But I strongly suggest that you pick it up. Read it. It's on Google Books. Again, it's by Thomas B. Allen. It's called Possessed, a true story of an exorcism. The names of the people involved, like most of the people that were involved, and the person who was possessed, their names have been changed, and other names of professions have been changed as well, and like all sorts of things have been changed.
Protect their identities.
Yeah. But anyways. So this case was documented under a pseudonym Roland Doe or Robert Mannheim.
Okay.
If you're reading the book by Thomas B. Allen. Because I first came across the story on Wikipedia, and it referred to him as Roland Doe. But in the book, they referred to him as Robert or Robbie Mannheim. Anyways, so yeah, like their identities, names, all changed. I'm not going to dig into that because I'm not a dick. But anyways, Robert or Robbie was born approximately in 1935 in Maryland to Carl and Phyllis. The Great Depression was still going on, and because of this, his grandma lived with them. So it was Grandma Wagner. It was normal for several members of a family to be living in one house because times were hard. As a teenager, he lived a very routine life. He went to school. He came home. He was a big homebody. Not into sports.
Loser.
Thanks. He preferred board games, listened to the radio in his free time. He was also an only child, so he relied on adults for company.
Right.
He didn't exhibit any mental or emotional issues, so he was just a fairly normal kid.
Yeah.
For an only child.
Yeah, probably a little quiet or whatever.
Yeah, he was. His Aunt Harriet, who knew he liked board games, introduced him to the Ouija board.
Why is that a board game? Like, fuck's sake, Hasbro.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, fuck's sake, Hasbro. She introduced him to the Ouija board one day when she was over there visiting. In this book, it describes her as spiritual, which, like the way that it reads, the book read, it almost seemed like, like they like, it almost implied that because you're spiritual, you don't believe in evil things. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, okay. Yeah. It was like a catch-all, basically.
Yeah.
But I kind of get where she was coming from, though, as well, if this kid was like a little fucking loner.
Or maybe that just was the thing back then,
I think it was. But as well, like, this is the perfect game for fucking little Robbie. He won't be annoying us anymore. We can drink in the parlor. This is a one-player game.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
Hey, Bob, go find a friend.
Anyways, it says that his Aunt Harriet was spiritual, and she explained to him that any spirits that were around could move the planchette if he tried to communicate with them. Robbie liked the board.
Of course he did.
He started using it when he was alone, because he used to play with her. Aunt Harriet had explained to Robbie and Phyllis, who believed in the spiritual but didn't practice it, that spirits of the dead who wish to communicate will do so with the board, or they would find other ways, like knocking on walls.
While you're using the board, though.
No, it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
Yeah, they could be in conjunction with each other or separated incidents. She also made them aware that what seances were, and how they could be used to communicate with the dead. She told them, when using a board, spirits can control your hands and fingers, and seances, they can enter and control your whole body.
Sounds like she was kind of woke.
Yeah.
Like she was the cool aunt.
Yeah. Well, Robbie really took to her, you
Yeah.
know. I think it was because she was
Young and free spirited,
and she was cool
Yeah.
Aunt Harriet, you know.
with a name like Harriet. Can't not be cool.
On January 15, 1949, Robbie and Grandma Wagner were home. Carl and Phyllis had gone out. Robbie and his grandma heard a dripping noise in the house and looked everywhere in their 2-story home to try to find the source. The last place they looked was in the 2nd-story room that belonged to Grandma Wagner. There they noticed a picture of Jesus on the wall, starting to shake. Once Carl and Phyllis made it home, the sound stopped, but the sound of scratching began that they all heard. So, like, Robbie and Grandma were still in Grandma Wagner's. And I guess when Carl and Phyllis came home, they were like, what the hell are y'all doing up here?
Yo, come here, check this shit out.
So Carl looked under Grandma's bed and said a mouse who probably wanted shelter from the winter probably just came inside, you know?
Yeah.
So the matter was settled and they all went to bed.
Can I, sorry. We had mice we had a garage in our house when we first moved into it, but we converted it into the playroom, which is what it is now. But I don't think the mice ever actually got into the house. They were just in the garage. And around this time, I had a super hip Discman. And I guess I've just been falling asleep listening to music, or, well, now podcasts, for fucking ever, because I used to listen to my Discman and it would be under my pillow, right? So anyway, this one night, I hear this scratching under my bed. I'm like, what the fuck is that? I was only young, like maybe 11 or 12. So I like pulled out all the shit underneath my bed and I was like, there's nothing fucking there. Got back into bed and I heard the scratching again. So I go downstairs and I'm like, Dad, the mice are like in my fucking bedroom. Like, this is crazy. So Dad was up there for ages and we were like, we set a trap and all, I think. And he was like, there's no way that they got up here and they're not in the kitchen. Like, anyway, I got back into bed and I heard the scratching again. And I realized it was my Discman changing track.
Yeah, I remember that noise.
Yeah, and
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I never told my dad.
If you listen to music with headphones on a Discman and you leave it there, like even without, like if it's really loud, you can hear the music in the headphones, or you can just hear like the like of the Discman.
Yeah,
I remember that.
And so what I had the disc on random, so it would like really have to change tracks.
Yeah, make a lot of noise.
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
Funny.
So yeah, sorry, Dad. It was my Discman.
He doesn't listen.
No, but Mom does, and she can tell him. So yeah, so maybe it was her Discman. Maybe it was Grandma Wagner's Discman.
Yeah, so she's gonna be like, see, Jay, it was just his Walkman, and then he still forgot my chips from the Chinese.
That is an in joke, and it ends now.
All right. So
sorry, guys.
For the next several nights, the family continued to hear scratching noises that started at 7 p.m. and stopped by midnight. Carl ended up calling an exterminator, who searched around the house. He found nothing, but just in case, he put poison under the floorboards. But the scratching continued, and Carl, I guess it drove him crazy because he ended up ripping up the floorboards and the wall panels, like trying to find this fucking rodent.
Shit.
Anyways, but from a day to day, the family kind of just agreed that, of course, it had to have been a rodent, a rat, whatever. What is that big rodent that we just saw?
Oh, Capybara?
Oh, it had to be a big rodent, a capybara, rat, mice.
Capybara. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
We're watching Bob's Burgers now, people.
But Phyllis began to suspect that the dripping and the scratching had something to do with the Ouija board.
Oh, so the dripping was continuing as well?
No, just the scratching, but because they couldn't find the source.
That's what it started as, though.
Yeah. On January 29th, Aunt Harriet had passed, and Robbie began spending a lot of time playing with the board. After her death, all noises that they heard before had stopped, but new ones began in Robbie's room upstairs. He started to hear footsteps as soon as he started changing into his PJs to go to sleep. He said they sounded like squeaky footsteps that would walk up and down the length of his bed. This didn't scare him, though. After a week of this, Phyllis and Granny Wagner came in to sleep with him, and they heard it too. So I guess he wasn't telling anyone, you know? And that's how they found out, like, they were just... Because, like, this whole time, it just seems like they're a close-knit family.
Yeah.
You know?
But that didn't scare him?
No. I think it was because of those conversations that he had with Aunt Harriet. Like, remember, they're probably just thinking they're spirits, that they didn't equate evil to spirits or demons or any... Like, demons and evil was never on the spectrum in the beginning.
Yeah, this was just like, oh, this is cool. These are like my dead friends or whatever.
Yeah.
Still, freak.
Okay. Phyllis asked out loud if it was Harriet making that noise. Oh, yeah. So they thought it was her for a long time.
Okay, yeah.
During the career of this, Phyllis was like hard pressed that this had to be Harriet.
Yeah, of course. We do the same thing in my house.
Like, it had to be her doing this for whatever reason. And even like when shit gets real dicey, she sticks to her guns that no, it has to be Aunt Harriet.
Yeah. It's like she's trying to tell us something, like, or whatever.
Exactly. So when Phyllis asked out loud if it was Harriet, she was like, Aunt Harriet, if this is you, knock 4 times on the wall. And while they were all still in Robbie's bed, they felt a pressure on top of all of them. Like, they all felt this. And then they heard 4 knocks in response. They all felt and heard a loud scratch coming from underneath them in the mattress. And then the bed covers flew from under the mattress and scrunched up into themselves. They all got off the bed, and Phyllis touched the edges of the bed covers. They quickly straightened themselves out and laid lifeless. The scratching didn't stop and would not stop for 3 whole weeks. Other things began to happen that had no explanation, and they were not like contained inside the house. Like, these things always followed him. So, for example, at school, Robbie's desk would shake and move into the aisle of his classroom. Like how they set up the class. Yeah. It would just go into the aisle. And of course, he'd say he didn't do it. At home, random things around the house would fly, like off, like just pick themselves up and just fly. Jeez. Or they'd like shake from where they were sitting or hanging, like pictures, whatever.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny that they particularly pointed out like fruit would fly. Books, clothes, stuff like that.
Banana.
Normally, like Adam and I have talked about before, these kinds of things happen only when the people who live in the house are there. Maybe just a person who's linked to the Ouija board to elicit feelings of isolation in their communities. But this thing just didn't give a fuck. It
would just happen when...
I mean, it happened to him at school.
Oh, yeah.
And it happened in front of visitors. Some relatives came to visit, and while they were all sitting in the living room, the sofa chair that Robbie was sitting in flipped and sent Robbie flying off of it.
Holy shit.
All the visiting relatives saw and tried to recreate it, but the chair was just too heavy. A vase also began to levitate from off the side table, and it stayed in the air for a while before it went flying into a wall and just breaking. Once they decided to take a family trip to go visit some friends in Boonesboro, which is about an hour and a half drive away from where their home in Mount Rainier was.
Is that in Washington?
Yeah, it's in that area. Everything was uneventful on the trip to there. It wasn't until they had settled in that something wild happened. Robbie was sitting on a rocking chair and it came off the floor and started spinning like a top with Robbie still in it.
Fucking hell. And they still weren't scared, like.
I mean, yeah. So, the parents tried to explain it away to their friends by saying like, oh, it was a magic trick that Robbie learned. But like while Robbie was spinning in the chair, Robbie was like, it's not me.
It's not a fucking magic trick, Mom.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So Robbie's parents sought help by going to doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, and all of them were in consensus in saying that there was nothing wrong with Robbie.
Yeah,
he was just, at the most, he was a little high strung.
Yeah, I'm like, can you blame him?
No.
Can't even sit in a chair without being fucked out of it or spun around.
So the family was Lutheran, right? So they were like, okay, we're going to go to the church. So they did. They turned to a Lutheran church in Washington, D.C., ran by Reverend Luther Schultz. They confided in him that Robbie about that time that they awoke to the sound of Robbie screaming. And they said that when they ran in to see what was going on, his dresser slid across the floor and blocked the doorway.
Oh.
Then the drawers opened and closed on their own. The Reverend suggested prayer because there's no exorcism in the Lutheran church.
That's pretty interesting, yeah.
Yeah. And personally, he thought that the boy should just go to a psychiatrist.
Yeah, I always go to the psychiatrist when my drawers start opening on their own and chairs start throwing me out of it.
Well, I'll explain why this was their response.
Okay.
What he did do was hold prayer circles for the family, and that's eventually how the story of what was going on in the house and with Robbie had spread.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like other families would get involved and all pray together.
Well, yeah, they'd ask, well, okay, we're praying for this family, but what's going on?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Robbie continued to have restless sleep. He would talk, scream, curse in his sleep. Sometimes it was as if he was talking to someone in his dreams. Schultz had read about poltergeist cases and noticed that the common denominators were that it only happened in the family home and the teens who lived in those homes. The paranormal activity would only stop when the teens were taken out of the home, and he figured it was because the teens were too unfamiliar with their surroundings to recreate what they had done at home.
Okay, yeah.
Schultz suggested Robbie spend the night at the Reverend's house so that he could watch him. Robbie came over, didn't want to talk much, so they retired to a bedroom with 2 separate twin beds. At midnight, Schultz was awakened by a noise, and when he went to check on Robbie, he noticed that the bed was shaking and vibrating violently, with Robbie laying wide awake in it. They both left the room to gather themselves and came back into the room. Schultz suggested that Robbie sleep in the sofa chair in that room instead. Robbie climbed in and sat in it with his knees to his chest. Like, I just feel so bad for this kid.
Yeah, but can you imagine as well, like, that image in my head is this priest or whatever. I'm not going to make any pedo jokes, but, like, he's lying in his bed and this kid is just sitting in the chair in the corner, like, knees to his chest.
Yeah, because...
Like, this whole scene is just fucking terrifying.
Well, I mean, he needs to watch him.
No, I know. It's just...
Mm-hmm.
This is terrifying.
Yeah, it's gotten to this point. But that's why the family, this was their last resort.
Yeah.
Nothing was helping.
Of course, yeah.
And I think that's why it's so alien to us, because we've never personally experienced anything like this.
Yeah, touching wood right fucking now.
Right. Anyways, so the sofa chair, I'm stressing the words sofa chair that Robbie was in, backed itself into the wall and then tipped itself over. Schultz righted the sofa and he tried to tip it over himself, but couldn't because the chair had such a low center of gravity, like all fucking sofa chairs.
Yeah, especially back then when they really made things to last. But no, like old furniture was heavy as shit.
Yeah.
They weren't shopping at IKEA.
No. Schultz then decided that the best place for Robbie to sleep was on the floor. Because I think at this point he was like,
can't flip the floor.
No. It was just like, I want this kid to have like a good night's sleep. Like, he's obviously scared, you know? He's scared. He's over it, you know?
Yeah. I'm sure the priest is scared too, you know? Or the reverend.
So, Robbie was laying between two sheets, right? So he laid one down on the floor. Robbie laid down and then another sheet. It was a Robbie sandwich. Yeah. So at 3 a.m., Schultz awoke to Robbie and the blankets sliding under the twin bed as if they were like a unit. Like,
yeah, all three.
All three. The edges of the blankets and Robbie himself were straight and stiff. Like there was no dragging of the fabric.
Yeah, this was like just one unit moving.
It was defying physics.
Yeah, Jesus.
The Reverend then went to check under the bed where Robbie was and saw that Robbie was bouncing up and down between the floor and the underside of the mattress. His face was hitting the springs. When Schultz pulled him out, Robbie's face was covered in cuts.
Fuck.
Like it was literally jamming his face into that metal.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so fucked up.
And so this is kind of the first time it started to actually hurt him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there might have been other kinds of pains.
Yeah, yeah.
Or minuscule ones, but this one was blatant.
Yeah, really marking him up.
Mm-hmm. Throughout this whole ordeal, Robbie's demeanor was always indifferent, as if he was used to this weirdness and just over it all. The Reverend was finally convinced that Robbie was possessed. Schultz knew that he couldn't help and told the Mannheims that they should see a Catholic priest as they know more about, quote, these kinds of things.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is where I explain about the whole reason why Lutherans there's no exorcisms in the Lutheran Church, because Lutherans don't see Satan as a powerful adversary, and that topics like possession were nothing more than outdated cop-outs from like the Middle Ages.
Okay.
Protestants, particularly Lutherans, look at Jesus and his exorcisms differently, because apparently there are accounts of Jesus performing exorcisms, but they interpret it a certain way.
Right.
So I'm paraphrasing because it's, like...
Yeah, we're not going into the Bible.
Yeah. So they read these kinds of stories like Jesus didn't correct local beliefs about the natural world, like spirits, and, like he didn't go into these towns being like, no, they're not real. He just went in and like fixes whatever problem they had, and he just moved on. Because Jesus was a rolling stone.
Like he was performing magic tricks without actually saying, oh, no. He was just sick because he needed whatever.
Yeah.
Salt.
Sure, whatever.
Whatever used to happen back then. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Israel in the BCs.
So that's why.
Okay.
So, I mean, if they've grown up in the Lutheran Church and then Aunt Harriet's telling them, spirits are these neutral things, then the last thing in their mind was the devil and evil.
Yeah. Okay.
So
they just kept poking and prodding.
Yeah, and they were, again, consistent that this was still Aunt Harriet at this time.
No, like, do you not remember the way Aunt Harriet used to come in and smash Robbie's face against the underside of the bed?
It just wasn't... It wasn't something that they were exposed to.
Yeah, no, they weren't. It just wasn't in there.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
The Mannheims called St. James's Church and got Father E. Albert Hughes and arranged to meet at the Catholic Church, which apparently was weird because, like, of the whole Protestants and Catholics don't mix and mingle.
Yeah.
Also, it didn't help that the room the meeting was in turned like freezing cold as soon as Robbie entered.
Ugh.
Hughes's phone started to shake, and it was at this moment that the 29-year-old priest was sure Robbie was possessed. He was like, "You don't need to fucking spend the night at my rectory. You're fucking possessed."
Rector. I damn near.
You're so stupid. He then sent the family home with holy water and blessed candles. Like, remember, this is a 29-year-old priest.
That's what I was thinking. Like, every year I age, but I'm 29 now, by the way. But yeah, every year that I get older, it's like maybe next year is an appropriate age for certain things. You know? But to like be seeing families with possessed children, or possibly possessed children, at the age of 20, I'd be thinking like, you know, a priest in his 60s or something would be like, you know, I studied this for 40 years and now I'm finally ready to
Well, see, the thing is, you wouldn't.
see
That's
The
not how.
Exorcist straight away. No, I know that.
Yeah, that's just not how things were, because exorcists were few and far in between.
Yeah,
So if you were to see a priest, more than likely they were not
The Exorcist.
trained in exorcisms.
Yeah.
They have specialties that they can focus on while they're in school.
Yeah, no, like that's why when we covered that other priest that we covered,
Oh, okay.
fucking what was his name again?
Oh, I don't know. So at home, Phyllis went on to spread the holy water everywhere when she lit the candles. Not soon after, Hughes received a phone call saying that something had lifted the bottle of holy water and smashed it into the ground. And when she tried to light the candle, the flame shot to the ceiling.
Jesus.
So she put it out, because she was scared of burning the fucking house down.
Yeah.
As you do.
Oh, you want to light this candle, do you?
There's a lot of that. Before Hughes could even begin to act, he had to follow the instructions in the official book of Catholic rituals called the Roman Rituals. That is super fucking old and has not changed much since the 1st century. This book is going to come up a lot.
Yeah.
And it's super fucking interesting. Apparently it's like, I think it's like either, I know these are like really random numbers, but either 45 or 21 pages.
Oh, what? That's it?
Yeah, but it's vague and specific at the same time.
Right.
It's specific in the things that you have to do and the state that you have to be when you're exorcising or giving someone an exorcism. Exercising. But also very vague in, okay, you have to note certain things. What do you see this, they call these victims of possession, they call them patients in this book.
Okay.
Note, the behavior in the patient, or, like that, those kind of open-ended things.
Yeah.
Because each one is going to be different, right? In that book, it says that he would have to contact who is referred to as, quote, the ordinary, which is the priest who had immediate jurisdiction in church matters. And that was Reverend Patrick O'Boyle, who was the Archbishop,
yeah.
of Washington. So O'Boyle had to just review the case and decide if an exorcism was necessary. And also, he had to be the one to appoint the necessary person to do it. The Roman ritual also has a description on what kind of person this has to be. Like, he has to be older than Hughes.
Oh, okay.
And have impeccable moral fiber otherwise, because Satan will use their sins against them. But these people also have to do their homework before they do this exorcism. Like, they have to read up on these kinds of cases to know what to expect, None of this was followed because Hughes was chosen to do the exorcism and he did not do his homework. So O'Boyle was like, fuck the rules. I'm going to choose this 29-year-old priest who has no idea what he's doing. He hasn't studied this. He's going to do it. And Hughes was like, cool. I'll just go to confession, because apparently, according to Catholic faith, demons can't use sins that you've been absolved of against you, because you've technically been forgiven.
Yeah. So basically, he was. Oh boy, I was like, ugh, I don't know. You figure it out.
Yeah, basically.
All right.
He just kind of left him out to dry.
Yeah, because I thought they were supposed to get in touch with the Vatican and all.
No, apparently not. Maybe things have changed since the 50s.
I think, yeah, I do think they reviewed them in like 1999 or something.
Oh, well, when the movie came out, there was tons of exorcisms happening, and I think that might have changed the rules a little bit to keep priests from going exorcist happy.
Yeah.
But anyways, so he did. Hughes went to go to confession. He had very little education in demonology. His education only prepared him to help Catholics with regular moral problems.
Yeah, like how to be married.
Yeah. There were other priests in the area who had a better understanding on how to deal with this, and no one knows why O'Boyle didn't go to any of them instead. I guess he was just like, deal with it, let it be over, let's move on and forget about this shit.
Yeah, he probably didn't even fucking think twice about it.
No. The exorcism took place in the winter of 1949 by Hughes, with no advice from O'Boyle. He was also instructed not to document anything about it. At this point, Robbie was just a husk of his former self. Listless, waking up with scratches all over his body, not sleeping, and not going to school anymore.
And just not caring, like just still indifferent.
I mean, have you ever gone without sleep for days and days?
No.
I would imagine I would also be a husk of my former self. He was secretly admitted to the Catholic-run Georgetown Hospital under an assumed name. Robbie was strapped to a bed. Hughes probably was attended by a nun of the hospital. So they both, or, however many were in attendance, they all entered the room and it began.
Right.
No one noticed one of Robbie's hands free itself from under its strap and reach under the bed to wrangle a bed spring from the mattress. Robbie used this to slice Hughes from shoulder to wrist. A wound so deep that it would need 100 stitches to close back up.
Jesus.
Hughes stopped the exorcism, left the hospital, and had a complete mental breakdown. He'll later describe, like, it wasn't just a wound to him.
Yeah.
He felt a force pierce him, like, with that wound. Like, while he was getting assaulted, he felt evil
Enter him, like.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was like a physical wound
a twofer.
and a spiritual wound.
Fuck.
He was never the same after that. But apparently he had eventually, he became like, I guess like before he was like cool guy priest.
Yeah.
But after that, like he was devout. Like he was just like, I know why we're here now. I know why I'm a priest. I know what I'm dealing with now. Poor guy.
Yeah.
Full function of that arm would not come back to him. The rumor spread that it was Robbie that had stabbed him, and the family moved not too far from their original address, but, the stigma followed.
Yeah.
Many people knew who they were and the evil that had invaded that family. Phyllis decided that a bigger change was needed. Carl and Phyllis had family in St. Louis, Missouri, so they talked about going. Shortly after, Robbie was in the bathroom and started screaming his head off. When Phyllis ran to see what was wrong, she claimed that the word Lewis had appeared in scratch marks on Robbie's chest. March 5th, they left Maryland and arrived at the Lutheran side of the family at their house.
Okay.
Because half of Robbie's family is Lutheran and the other half is Catholic.
Oh, that kind of works out.
So they arrived at their relative's house on March 7th. At this point, whatever plagued the family had been going on for 7 weeks now. While they were there, they made their own homemade Ouija board.
Great idea.
and gathered around the table. One person would have a pencil and hold it over whatever letter the spirit moved it to, and another person would write down the letter on a sheet of paper to see what message they'd received. So it was like one of those kinds of boards.
Yeah.
Their board told them that it was Aunt Harriet haunting Robbie. Unfortunately, what they didn't know was that Robbie would serve as a walking Ouija board too. Like, words would manifest themselves in his skin.
Oh.
Like scratches.
Like the Lewis.
Yeah.
Right.
So that wasn't like an isolated incident.
Yeah, yeah.
I wrote and I highlighted, like, why would they do this?
Oh, like they kept it up. They're like,
yeah, they were like, let's bring out the Ouija board again. Like,
hey Robbie, do that thing you do.
So fucked up. Anyways, so let's discuss. They were still convinced, of course, that it was Aunt Harriet, you know?
Yeah.
And even more,
of course, it said so on Robbie's back.
and even more so now because they had such a bad experience with the Catholic.
Oh,
like the
Harriet
Catholic
was a Lutheran.
Yeah, so like okay. So they sought help from Lutherans, right? They sought help from Catholics. When they sought help from Lutherans, they had a lot in common because they were like this has to be, spirit. If this is at this point, it's a spiritual ailment, something's going on. But like in the Catholic side, when they tried, I guess, that kind of help, all it really brought them was violence and, talks about demons. And she just wanted to believe that it was just a spiritual ailment and that it was Aunt Harriet, because to believe the other side of it would just be terrifying.
Yeah.
So that's why they kept doing what they were doing, Anyways, so apparently words appearing on Robbie was a normal thing, like I said before. According to the family, words would carve themselves on Robbie whenever the thing that was plaguing him wanted to speak or had an opinion. There was a time when Robbie was playing with his cousin. Phyllis was thinking that maybe they should enroll him in a school in St. Louis because in St. Louis, everything seemed to calm down a bit. Robbie was beginning to show signs of his old self. When she suggested this to Robbie, words carved out of him saying no school. I know how it sounds.
Was this on his chest again?
Sounds weird, I know, but it just seems unlikely. Personally, I think it's unlikely that a family that surely at this point has been traumatized by this whole ordeal, I don't know many people who would sensationalize traumatic experiences. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Everything was kept anonymous. They didn't want anyone to know. They attempted to move away.
Yeah.
So that nobody knew them. So I don't think they made this up. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but do you not think the kid could have done this to himself?
No, because while that was happening, they were all outside. He was playing with his cousin. And as Phyllis asked him, hey, what about school?
Oh, it happened there and then.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like he lifted up his shirt and it just fucking said it. No school.
Yeah. Here's the answer, bitch.
But it sucked because every time that happened, it was always at Robbie's expense because
of course.
The shit hurt.
Carving into his skin.
Fuck. Yeah. So after the Lutheran seance, that's what I'm calling it.
Okay.
The family moved in with the Catholic side of the family, Catherine and George, and their kids, Marty, Billy, and Elizabeth. The day was uneventful, and then the Robbie they knew started to peep through again when he was playing with Marty. That night, Marty and Robbie wanted to have an old school sleepover together and shared the same bed. At midnight, the family woke up to sounds coming from the bed the boys were staying in. The bed they were laying in was shaking and trembling as the boys lay perfectly still in it. And these, like, he's like 13, 14 at this point, he's still a kid.
Yeah. Well, is this all still over a matter of weeks?
So at this point, 7 weeks.
Right.
So almost 2 months of this shit.
Yeah, yeah.
And it doesn't end very soon. Elizabeth said that she would seek help from the Jesuit priest at her private school. And Phyllis had to agree because at this point, like it wasn't just their family. Like this was affecting, I mean, this situation has now spilled over to Marty, you know, his little cousin. So
yeah, like if I was Elizabeth, I just wouldn't allow that sleepover.
Elizabeth was Marty's sister.
Oh, sorry, the mom then.
Yeah. No, like, and they all knew, you know, but I guess they just didn't realize how bad it was
of it, like, yeah.
because they'd never seen it on their own again, like with their own eyes,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Whereas Robbie was like very indifferent about it. The family was terrified because this is the first that they'd seen of it. So Phyllis had to agree and she was like, all right, fine. So Elizabeth, she went to go talk to Father Raymond Bishop. After her conversation with Elizabeth, Raymond Bishop or Father Bishop went to the house and blessed the rooms of the house with holy water. He said a special prayer over the bed that Robbie was sleeping in. This prayer was made for low-level demon activity.
Okay.
Bishop suspected that they were looking at an infestation, considering all the things that Elizabeth had told him. Infestation, which is when demons stalk the objects and environment surrounding and the environment surroundings of the person they were tormenting. Robbie was past that point though. So infestation would be what you would think of poltergeist.
Yeah.
Okay. Robbie at this stage was obsession, which means the demon, like, he makes things happen in the host. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like the carvings.
Yeah.
On Robbie. While Bishop was still in the house, he pinned a second-class relic to Robbie's pillow. So a first-class relic is something that comes off the body of a saint or Jesus himself, like a piece of hair or whatever. A second-class relic is something that they've touched.
Okay.
I learned this in this book. By the way, this book is phenomenal. That night, the activity was more pronounced, and it was evident to Bishop that more drastic actions had to be taken. So he enlisted the help of another Jesuit priest named William S. Bowdern to go with him on a house call to Robbie's house. He was like, dude, you got to come see this shit. Bowdern agreed that this was the real deal, Holyfield, and initially helped him find an exorcist, and also helped him to do research about past exorcism. Their search for an exorcist came up fruitless, as the priest that had performed this ritual in the past said that they did not have the strength to do it again. And I'll describe why.
Okay.
The sources were skimpy too, because there weren't many documented cases that they could trust. There was like 2, I think.
Yeah.
And they were really skimpy. What they could build on was what could be taken from the Roman ritual, which was the book that contains the prayers and instructions on how to conduct an exorcism. The instruction in this book strongly rely on the priest's intuition when it comes to any additional prayers that should be recited during the ritual and how often it should be performed. When the duo had gave all the information to their Archbishop Ritter chose Bowdern to be the exorcist and told him not to document anything.
So the same as the other guys, like, look, do this shit, but do it like off the record.
Mm-hmm. Fortunately, the 2 ignored this advice. They wanted to leave their experiences documented for future references in case another priest had to deal with a possession himself in the future.
Right on.
I know. What followed was a sequence of rituals, not at all like how you see in movies, like a one done and, you know.
Yeah.
Bowdern and Bishop acquired a driver, a younger priest who worked with them, called Walter Halloran. That was his name. Halloran was recruited without a heads up. Like, they literally said, hey, dude, can you drive us here?
Oh, he was an actual, like, he drove the car, like.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was like, hey, can you drive us up here? And he was like, sure. Like, I'll pick you up at this time.
Here, give us a lift, will you?
And we'll head out. And as soon as they got to the house, they were like, hey, come come in there with us. And he was like, okay.
I can always, hey, you go in there first.
But they literally told him nothing.
Yeah, good. Good.
So when he went in, like, he was in there for a surprise, dude.
Yeah. So this is Bobby.
Robbie.
Bobby.
Robbie is a mess. All right. So during the exorcism, Robbie fell into sleeping spells. So this should tell you, because how I described the obsession.
Oh, it can force him to.
Possession can force a person into losing consciousness. And so that's the final, like, not, I guess he takes your soul is the final one, but
Yeah.
this is past obsession. Obsession, you're still awake. You know, you have normal sleep.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But when you're possessed, the demon can make
Knock
you
you
lose
out, like,
consciousness at the drop of a dime and bring you back the same way.
Right. Good to know.
Yeah. So he fell into sleeping spells. The Roman ritual states that the demon inside the patient will keep them unconscious so that they're unaware that the exorcism is going on.
Clever bastard.
Yeah. When Robbie woke up, it was not Robbie anymore. He would spit in the faces of the priest and his family, whoever who it was in the room with them. The crazy thing is, he would do this with his eyes closed. So that's how you knew it was the demon.
Yeah.
If Robbie had his eyes closed and he was saying shit, moving around, it wasn't Robbie.
Right.
It was the demon. When his eyes were open, it was Robbie. Like, his eyes were closed and he was spitting at people's face, never missing.
Wow.
Yeah. Just to bring this home, like, the craziness of it all. The kid was 95 pounds and he always needed more than 2 people to hold him down.
Jesus.
But they had to do this all night. These exorcisms went from like 8, 7 p.m. all the way until like 3, 5 o'clock in the morning. Every night. And if you're holding down someone for that long of period of time, you're praying, you're talking, anything, you're fighting, you know.
Yeah.
It's a motherfucker, man.
Yeah, it's
you
intense.
Know? Scratches and cuts would appear as he writhed around trying to break the hold of the people who held him down. He would urinate the bed he was held down on, and in his moments of lucidity, he would complain that his privates were burning. But this was like some radioactive piss, according to them, because like he pissed and impossible amounts of fluids will leave him, whether it was through pee or spit. Like, they were like, how the fuck is he spitting gobs of spit?
Like this amount of whatever. Jesus.
And apparently, like, the stench was so foul that they opened the windows and it would just be so foul. During, like, after these exorcism rituals, these nightly ones, it was always the same. Like, they'd come in, do the thing, leave in the wee hours of the morning. And Robbie would be tired too because he wasn't actually resting.
Yeah.
And never once did he remember what he did. And to this day, like, he doesn't remember anything.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised.
But he would only tell of what nightmares he had when he was asleep. In his dreams, he would say that he would fight demons.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Like, he said he would see them in his mind's eye, that he would be fighting these demons. Isn't that crazy?
That's nuts.
He said that he felt powerless from these demons up until the first night of the exorcism. He finally felt like he had a fighting chance to beat them.
Oh, but it was giving him hope, like the exorcism.
Yeah. It wasn't until that first exorcism he was like, I think I can beat this.
Hold up, I got this.
Yeah. What's wild is that after they were done dealing with Robbie, the priest, they had to go back to the school and go about their normal jobs. Because this was all supposed to stay secret, so they wouldn't be able to get excused from their normal duties no matter how late they were done. These nights would go on like till the next day.
Yeah.
As the nightly doses of exorcisms went on, the time it took to get him to normal sleep was less and less. So like that's what you'll see. Like they'll have patterns of like, you know, sometimes the exorcisms would run short. Sometimes they would run long. after they got into a routine of doing them. And it's kind of like when you're sick, you know, like you have your bad days and your good days. In this case, it was like, it wasn't so violent, I guess, or it wasn't so long. But when it was bad, it was bad.
So like they would be able to tell, oh no, he's not under like oppression or whatever. He's just genuinely sleeping right now.
Yeah, they could tell when he was asleep
Okay.
because he wouldn't move.
Yeah, he wasn't having any fucking weird reactions or anything.
Yeah, I have a theory. I think the reason why the various amounts of time it took for some of these exorcisms, like the varying schedules, if you will,
Yeah.
was because this was a way to mess with the priest that performs the exorcism. It's a sort of way to mess with their head because they're literally fighting with something evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see like the ritual states that the demon will bring your hopes up.
Oh, it actually says that.
Yeah, it will pull you into a false sense of, okay, this is getting better.
Yeah, we're winning.
And then it'll just get real bad and the exorcism will last until 5 a.m., you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And the reason why that happens is because it's to plant a seed of despair, if you will, into the mind of a priest.
Like try and break them down. Like.
And one of the ultimate sins is the loss of hope, the loss of faith.
Right.
And that's how they do that. That's my theory.
Yeah. Oh, I guess.
So the demon started to get more creative when it tried to get a rise out of the priest.
Did it start cross-stitching?
No. But it did start writing on sheets.
Oh, okay. Different take.
So the ritual book warns that no matter what the demon said or did, you should never engage with it. Once during an exorcism, Bowdern asked, "When will the demon leave?" And an X emerged from Robbie's skin. So Bowdern interpreted as the demon would depart in 10 days. After 10 days of exorcism, all fell quiet. No more thrashing, so they thought they got rid of it. The family started making preparations to return home, but then it started up again, 4 days later. Robbie went to sleep one night, and again the family ran into his room because his bed started to shake again. What was different this time was that Robbie was asleep, sitting up, and
I don't like that.
and moving his finger on the sheets as if he was writing something. So the family decided to try to decipher what the message was before they called Bowdern. Because at this point, Bowdern was like, all right, cool, it's done.
Yeah. All right, I'm out.
Bowdern rushed to the house and saw that the family was providing Robbie with sheets to write on. It was a fucking circus. But Bowdern began the exorcism. Robbie then asked Bowdern for a pencil. The book warns against the creative ways that the devil or demon will use in order to interrupt an exorcism or to engage in dialogue with the priest doing the exorcism, and Bowdern fell for it.
What a dick.
He allowed one of the priests that came with him to give Robbie a pencil. Bishop had not come with him because one of the messages that Robbie wrote was that Bishop would die a terrible death if he came back to see Robbie. So Bishop knew this because like one of the messages that he wrote before Bowdern got there was that if Bishop came back, then he would die. So when they told Bowdern over the phone, he was like, you know, this is what he said, Bishop shouldn't come. He was like, all right, cool. Like, yeah. Maybe the demon knew Bishop would have intervened and kept Bowdern from allowing an avenue for communication.
Yeah, maybe he was onto him. Like.
Yeah. So the family decided to have Robbie baptized as a Catholic, as Bowdern had suggested it. Robbie agreed that he wanted that too. The day of the baptism, when the family were on their way to the church, Robbie started talking in demonic voices, like in broad daylight, which he hadn't done before. And he started attacking his mom inside the car while it was moving. The radio kept changing stations on its own until there was only static.
Nope.
Robbie's uncle turns off the car and struggles to peel Robbie off of Phyllis. Then they started the car back up again, and he started choking whoever was driving, because like they had to take turns driving, because like one got hurt, and then like
Yeah.
that was crazy. Like I wrote here, I think it's funny how the demon kept saying shit like, so you think Holy Communion will get me to leave? But he sure as shit kept fighting to keep them from driving him to the church. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So the baptism continued through small and weak moments of Robbie coming through to answer questions that one would normally ask in a baptism about renouncing the devil and accepting Jesus and stuff like that. There was so much fighting that the baptism itself took 4 hours.
Fuck.
The day after the baptism, Robbie woke up possessed instead of the normal Robbie, which was the first time that it ever happened, because remember, Robbie normally goes possessed like at 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Like, no, it's not 8 o'clock. Yeah.
Maybe it knew like the Holy Communion was coming, because that's what follows after a baptism.
Right.
So communion came and went, but it did nothing but flip a Robbie and demon switch on and off rapidly. He'd go from sweet Robbie asking for plates of food to throwing them at the priest. He would escape the priest's hold and chase them around the room to hurt them. He would spit again. He continued with the spitting and all this other shit. Like, he was just a nightmare. The ritual instructs that the exorcist must note what words in the prayers elicit violent reactions from the patient. In Bowdern's experience, the demon would get agitated when he'd ask the hours and days of day of his departure. Bowdern interpreted this as a sign that the demon knew his fun time was almost over. It's important to note that from the beginning of this whole process, Bowdern's health was declining. The book warns that this would surely happen to the priest, and it's not uncommon that the priest who started the exorcisms would not be the same one who would finish them to the end.
Wow.
Bowdern was already weighing out who his options were to take over. There was an account from Bowdern's brother who had seen him on one occasion and noted that he had lost a ton of weight and had like pus oozing boils all over his body.
Oh, Jesus.
And styes in his eyes. Like, he had pus, like he had boils in his, like he could barely raise his arms because they were so painful. Bowdern was most likely fasting on bread and water this whole time because the book instructed him to.
Yeah.
So like throughout this whole time, he was going back and forth from different places. So like he was at home at the beginning, like not at home, but like in his family's house in St. Louis.
Yeah.
They took him to the church to get him the college to get him baptized, and then they ended up taking him to a hospital. They ended up going back to his hometown at some point, and they were like, okay, he needs to continue his exorcisms, right? Because like the dad had to go back home. Like, they all just wanted to go home.
Yeah.
And they did, but they were like, well, Bowdern was like, I'd better go with you. And so like he went with them back home. They went to the Alexian Brothers Hospital, and that's where they put him on the 5th floor. They didn't tell anybody why he was there. They just, the Alexian like when he got there, nobody wanted to help Bowdern. Like, he contacted his Catholic priest there. They wanted nothing to do with him. He called several Catholic run hospitals to try to get him a room somewhere because he was like in a very poor state. Nobody wanted to take him. Yeah. But the Alexian Brothers did. So the Alexian Brothers it's a group of Catholic priests, I think they are, who, like, their main saint is Saint Alexis or something like that. And he's supposed to be like the patron saint of like helping the poor. Like, he dedicated himself to helping the poor. Right. And they also take in like priests who have like alcoholic problems. They were some of the first people to say that alcoholism is an addiction. Like, it's an actual medical problem. Now,
it was just that he just loves a drink.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And so going back to like why he was fasting, apparently like there was Saint Ignatius was the one that did exorcisms, and I think Jesus had too. but the only way that they were successful is after, or it was while fasting.
I have heard that before, but
So that's why he was fasting.
yeah, like you would assume, like, oh, it's just like one day's worth of bread and water, but actually this has gone on for weeks now, right?
Yeah. So while he was staying at this hospital, like this is like the final destination of his whole possession career. Like during the day, like, so he was already converted to a Catholic. He was...
This is Robbie that's staying in the hospital, right? Okay.
Yeah, we're still talking about Robbie.
Yeah.
He's staying in the hospital. He's not at home anymore. His dad spends the night with him sometimes so that he's not by himself. But, well, actually, he's never by himself. There's always somebody with him.
Okay.
Because he's in such a delicate state. Like,
Yeah,
at this point, he changes at the drop of a dime. Like, whether it's daytime or nighttime, you know?
Yeah, they just take over whenever they want.
Yeah, so like they rotate priest. He's a devout Catholic, this kid already, you know, and he loves like the stories that they tell him about the saints, and you know, he learns his prayers, rosaries. He helps other priests with their daily duties around the hospital. Like he's really into it, you know.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's because, remember what he said when the exorcisms first started, it felt like he found strength.
Yeah, it gave him hope or whatever, yeah.
Yeah. So one day, Robbie was hanging out with a priest, and the priest was like, well, you know, he hasn't been possessed during the day, so I'll take him to the Stations of the Cross that were nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And so they went. He went. It was him and another priest walked him through the stations and was telling him the stories about Jesus. And in the middle of the way, Robbie ended up breaking into a sprint, trying to run away.
Oh, shit.
And so the priest tackled him and like dragged his ass back into the car. And like...
Oh, so he was taken to him to a Stations of the Cross mass.
No, like, I think they had like the stations.
Display.
Yeah. At some place called White House. I don't think it's the White House.
Maybe it was just an area or something.
Yeah.
The church had it.
And again, like, just like the car ride to the church, like Robbie was attacking these priests while they were trying to fucking drive back to the hospital.
Yeah.
And so by the time Bowdern got to Robbie's room, Robbie was like, hey, like, what's up? Yeah. Like,
priests are bitches, by the way.
as if nothing fucking happened. So that night, Robbie's demon spoke again, saying, God has told me to leave at 11 tonight, but not without a struggle. Of course, this was not true. Again, reinforcing the belief that absence of hope will weaken the will of the exorcist.
Right, yeah.
Plus, the devil is a big fat liar. On the actual night of the last fight, Robbie said the rosary and prayers in his brief moments of consciousness. He said that he felt like he had to do everything he could to help get the demon out. So then he started, which I thought were pretty cool, because he was like, you know, I had to be more active in my solution.
Yeah, I can't just lie here while this all goes on.
Yeah. From when the demon started speaking through Robbie, the demon had mentioned that he would leave if only Robbie said a certain word, but he wouldn't let Robbie say it. So like in those moments that the demon spoke through Robbie, he would be like, you know, I'll leave if he says this one word, but he'll never say it, because, you know, he's like, I'm not going to let him.
Right.
But, you know, and Bowdern and Bishop, they sort of mulled this over in their minds, because they were like, what if he's fucking lying?
Yeah.
You know, and what could this word possibly fucking be? Like, if it wasn't a lie, you know? And it had already strung him along, like, with the 10 days and, you know, like, I'll leave, and he doesn't fucking leave, you know?
Yeah.
So, in the ritual, it states that the exorcist would need to keep an eye out for a sign that it was truly over, because the demon would absolutely pretend that he's left his host in order to stop the exorcisms from continuing. This sign is different in every case, and the priest had to trust his gut to know what the sign would be. So that's what I mean. Like, it was specific but vague at the same time.
Yeah.
So anyways, going back to the final night. In the midst of Robbie's usual thrashing and writhing, cursing and spitting, a different voice came through. It said, Satan, Satan, I am Saint Michael, and I command you, Satan, and the other evil spirits, to leave the body in the name of Dominus, immediately, now. After that, Robbie's body contorted and he screamed for another 20 minutes before collapsing. He just simply woke up and said, it's gone. Those who were in the room rejoiced, all except Bowdern. He was still waiting for his sign. Days and nights passed, and he was still waiting for his sign. In the meantime, Robbie had joined the other priest, helping them to do their duties in the hospital. You know, the nights passed and they were uneventful.
But he was still staying in the hospital.
He was still in the hospital because Bowdern was like, no,
Yeah.
not yet. It wasn't until one day when Robbie went into his room on the 5th floor to take a nap because he said he was feeling drowsy. Again, he was never left alone, so he was there with a priest. Shortly after, there was a huge bang noise. And apparently, like, it resonated in the hallways, in the rooms. Priests, nuns, fucking patients, everyone heard it in different parts of this big-ass hospital.
Shit.
And it all seemed to come from the 5th floor. So everybody jolted to the 5th floor. And the priests in Robbie's room heard it too. Like, Robbie heard it.
Yeah.
And so they all headed towards his room because they figured that's where the noise was coming from. The priest just opens the door. He's like, what the fuck's going on? You know, like.
Yeah.
And Robbie's just sitting on the bed, just smiling, like sitting up, like, but he just looks not like evil. He just looks at peace.
Oh, okay.
And Bowdern was like, this is my sign.
That big bang, that was the sign.
Mm-hmm. And apparently, Robbie went on to live a very normal life. Nothing ever came back. And that was it for him.
That was it. Fucking hell.
Yeah. Nothing ever came to pass, like all the threats about
The other priests and stuff.
they lived long lives. Like, they died in their 80s, some in their 90s. And anybody who was involved, they lived long lives. Even Bowdern himself. They continued in the priesthood and everything. Once Robbie checked out of that hospital, they locked that room. And no one's supposed to go in there. The building has been since knocked down.
Okay.
They thought it was weird. Like, the people who knocked it down, they're like, why is this room not in use? But, like, there's still people alive who have relatives that were these priests that were involved.
Yeah.
So the story got out because this was all supposed to say hush hush. Schultz was the one that got the ball rolling when the fam was like, hey, we're not Lutherans anymore, we're Catholics. So he was like, all right, well, my confidentiality is null and void. So he ended up...
This is the Reverend, the Lutheran Reverend?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So what he ended up doing was he was using Robbie's real name, but not his last name. But what he was doing was he was asking professionals, like psychologists and whatever, be like, hey, I had this case. This is what I saw. Do you know anything that resembles this?
Yeah.
And apparently, like, somebody picked this up, you know, like media got a hold of all this questioning, and they published an article with very vague details, just like, there's this kid that was possessed or whatever. And the writer of the movie The Exorcist saw this and was inspired to write a movie about it.
Okay.
So that's how that happened. So the diary was handed over to the Alexian brothers, and that's where it was kept. When it was knocked down, like, they really had no control over, like, whose hands it would fall on.
Yeah.
So it kind of just got tossed around or whatever. Anyways, like rumors got around of who the priests that were involved. So it came out that Hughes was involved, because Hughes was the first priest that had done the Exorcist
Yeah, he's
or
guy
the exorcism.
got his arm sliced open.
Right. So he was still in the priesthood, and he had eventually gotten this assistant, and the assistant knew about the rumors that Hughes was one of the ones that was involved in the exorcism. And, he would talk about it with his other priest friends, and he was like, all right, I'm going to ask him. So they did, and Hughes was like, yeah, devil's real, and he's fucking strong,
Yeah, I felt him.
And he was like, he was talking about, he said that he was thinking about doing seminars to, like, for priests so that they were aware
of the dangers.
The dangers. And, like, he was confiding in him all these things. And he was just like, at the end of the conversation, he's like, hey, like, I would love to talk more about this, but I'm tired. Like, it exhausts him.
Yeah.
So he was like, let's talk later and, come up with these plans for the seminar. He was like, all right, cool. And so he went to sleep, and like 4 days later, he died of a heart attack.
What the fuck?
He was the only one that died prematurely.
He's also the only one that got attacked.
Yeah.
Like that.
He had a heart attack at 62. Anyways, so the diary itself ended up finding its way to the writer of this book, and the book has a copy of the diary.
Wow.
So if you're interested in reading the diary, I suggest you pick up this book.
Holy shit. All right.
Yeah. So that's my story.
What?
What do you think of it?
That was really fucking cool. And in my head, like, I'm picturing all the, like, the hospital near where I grew up and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
That's good. That means, like, that's what stories are supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
They're supposed to, like, give you, it's supposed to tell us a movie. You see a movie in your head.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, that was really cool. Like, that poor kid and fucking Aunt Harriet.
Yeah. The one that
What
started it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did she die again?
She just died suddenly.
Probably fucking around.
I don't know, but that's why we tell you, kids, don't mess with the Ouija board.
Yeah, they are bad news. All right. Well, you obviously thoroughly enjoyed researching.
I loved it. I learned so much about the Catholic religion. Like, they're literally, like, I know how you're like, I know you don't buy the idea of someone just like Catholic superheroes, but I absolutely do. But not because of the organized religion part of it, but because of the faith it has to take to combat something so evil.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
No, I get it. I do. I'm just, what's the word, like, disillusioned, I guess. I just don't trust priests.
No, yeah. Hey, I get it, I get I don't trust priests, fuck pedophiles, like in the priesthood, and like all the fucked up things that were done in the name of Christ, like these conquests and like genocides and shit, all in the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, I get it, but this particular story, like, it gave me a new perspective.
Yeah, and I do love those stories as well, like, and I believe in them too, so I don't know. I'm 50-50, I guess. Depends what day you catch me on.
Yeah.
Anyway, guess what time it is?
It's almost time for bed.
Almost time for bed, but it's also listen to story time.
And I still have to take a shower, Adam.
That was my beautiful musical introduction. I'm going to try and make that a weekly thing.
Okay.
Nobody asked for it. So this week's listener story, is super short, but it's a good one. And it was sent to us by our listener, Caitlin, who lives in the Windsor, Essex area of London, I think. England, anyway. So Caitlin says, I wanted to share one of my ghost stories with you guys. The house I am currently living in, I had a paranormal experience in. When I was around 12 years old, I was trying to sleep in my room and I heard two voices talking to each other in a language I didn't understand. The next morning, I had told my grandma and mom what I heard, and they told me that the previous owner's husband and mother-in-law were Italian
Okay.
and had passed away in this house, which is over 100 years old.
Sick.
So she heard the old resident.
Yeah.
Spooky.
I picked that up. I
So
gathered.
so what happened? What? She also said, "I love the show. Keep up the good work, Caitlin. P.S. I have many more stories to tell you from the Windsor, Essex area."
Awesome.
And I wrote back pretty quickly and I said, "Caitlin, tell us all these stories, please."
Yeah.
But no, I really like that one. I like
Yeah,
a good residual haunt.
Yeah.
And as well, it's nothing too spooky. Like,
I know you call it the stone tape theory, but I still call it the stench.
yeah, we're gonna try and change that to just the stench.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was this week's episode.
I wonder how long it's going to be. Probably longer if we keep on going on our tangents
Yeah.
in the beginning and the end. Well, you know, while I was telling my story, the computers started acting up more often than it normally did.
Yeah, for whatever reason. I just reckon it's when the computer grows a little bit tired.
Mm-hmm.
It starts to repeat stuff. And it doesn't come through on, like, when I'm editing it or anything like that. But as we're talking, it'll be like, it'll just repeat the last word we said like 3 or 4 times. Like, times. And we just have to kind of sit back and wait for it. But it tends to happen when we're talking about, like, the spookiest of shit.
Yeah, it can be really jarring.
Yeah. You just, all of a sudden, there's someone talking in your headphones. Like,
Yeah. And then when you play it back, you can't hear it. You're just like, what was that? Because you can't prove it to anybody.
Yeah. But yeah. So, that's it. What did I talk about? Oh, yeah. The Canadian one. And then, oh, this one was America. So we're all North America this week. Whatever. Okay. We want your stories every week. We want your stories. And we sincerely hope that you enjoyed our Halloween extravaganza. I know the guys put in a lot of work, and so did we. And it was really fun doing it. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll have some more episodes like that in the future.
Yes.
Yeah, also, if anybody has any suggestions of topics that they would like us to cover, feel free to send them in.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that by emailing us at weeklycreep@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
Find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. All our handles are just Weekly Creep.
Yep. Everywhere.
If you're a fan of Reddit, find us on there. Our subreddit is completely empty. So feel free to add comments or do whatever. I don't really understand Reddit.
Post anything.
Yeah.
Post a picture of your dog. I don't care.
Yep.
I want
All
to see your pets.
Yeah, show us your pets. Send us in pictures of your pets and we'll add them to our story or our Instagram or whatever.
Yeah, fuck it.
Do
what we want.
Yep.
All right, we'll see y'all later, or
Yeah.
we'll not see you.
We'll
later.
see you next week.
We'll talk at you later.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye.